Good morning, everyone. Welcome
morning.
to Morning Minutes. Myself, Michael Bergio, Mark Novak, episode 347. Who's stealing my money? Actually, Mark, holding deposits, being refunded. It's not as cut and dry. And I think a lot of time clients think the agent's trying to steal their money. Basically what it is. So in this show, let's break it down from residential, commercial, and sales. We have touched on sales previously, but let's get in a bit more detail, especially when it is residential. We love the detail. Good morning, Luke. As he said, let buyers beware.
Luke.
Perfect.
And it is that way, isn't it? The buyers, you got to know the rules and the regs as to your eligibility of getting deposits back. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, and I think from the get-go, as an agent, it works out so much better to have these conversations straight up. I think far too often agents are happy to talk about the good stuff, the good details, but they don't get into the bad details of what could happen. So buyers and tenants, when things go wrong, because let's face it, shit goes wrong all the time. And if you haven't had that conversation at the beginning, it gets really sour really quickly, and deposits is a big one. I know in my earlier years, especially if we start with commercial, it would be in the application in the writing, but so deposit for commercial can a lot of the time work, especially if it's an office or industrial. You've agreed on terms, you sign a heads of agreement, a term sheet. And in that term sheet, it basically says if for whatever reason the lease is not signed and does not go ahead, the legal fees accrued will be deducted from the holding deposit. Simple, and in my experience, when you say that up front, when you go to the tenant, just so you know, once we go to this stage, it's formal. Any cost accrued, because it's an external party. The lawyer has to get paid for drawing up that lease, regardless if you like it, if you pull out.
So this is rentals, and this is commercial.
Yes.
We're going to cover retail, residential, and retail and stuff like that. But this is commercial, and this is New South Wales. Like Luke just said, it's Queensland. They refund the holding deposit if issues with finance, pest, and building. Okay, so let's talk about commercial leasing. If you get an agreement with the landlord, sign off on a heads of agreement. What did you just say?
You sign off on a heads of agreement. If the lease is not signed, either party does not go ahead, that the legal fees will be deducted from the holding deposit. So normally a holding deposit, let's say it's 1 month, $5,000, and the legal fees are $1,000. Then you will be refunded $1,000. Yep.
Will pay for the landlord's legal fees. But you know what I reckon? I reckon if you're the solicitor for the landlord, you probably would be a little bit cheeky, wouldn't you?
I think you got to put it this way. Everyone's got the incentive for the deal to go ahead. A lot of time a property could be empty for 6 months, 12 months. The owner wants it rented. Yeah, and a lease, they're generally pretty standard. Yes, there's some clauses that are here nor there. In my experience, where it blows up is you have a lawyer, you have a client who doesn't have a lawyer who specializes in commercial, and they don't understand a lot of the terms. I reckon when a client would get a lease, and their lawyer who may dabble in commercial blows everything out of proportion, they're pretty basic. It's the lack of understanding by solicitors. It's insane.
What do you reckon? 1 in 5, 1 in 3? What do you reckon?
Of the deals that blow up, I reckon half are generally from the lawyer, if not higher, and they're not for legitimate reasons. Where obviously an agent's biased to get the deal, but I'm pretty. I call strikes and spares. I think that's the saying. So but a lot of the time, the lawyer in the tenant's ears is, what about this? What about this? Oh, I'm all doing this to protect you, But a lot of it's irrelevant. And a lot of it is just the lawyers blow up the deal. So in that case, if it doesn't go ahead, then someone's got to pay for that lawyer. And if you put yourself, a tenant always goes, well, it's the owner's property. It's why shouldn't they pay? If you look, and the sort of response is, it's a lease for you. They're doing it on your behalf. You're looking to take up the property. So that's why you're paying for it. And two, from an owner's point of view, if for everyone that showed interest, if they drew up a lease at $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a pop, then it would get ridiculous. And also, a lot of the time, when a tenant's paying for it, they don't be as silly with some of the responses. And like sometimes you'll see a clause and they try and change the word from a to the because it could have a deeper meaning, but really clutching at straws. But when you're paying for it, you're not as willing to do that. You only look at the serious stuff that could really implicate you and be bad for you.
So you reckon it motivates the prospective tenant a bit more?
Yeah,
and they know they're paying for legal fees if it falls over. All right.
100%.
So that's rentals commercial. What about rentals retail? Because there is a difference between commercial and retail with like commercial office, commercial factory, retail. What's the difference?
So the difference is there's two costs. There's lease preparation cost, and then there's basically changes cost, communication cost. Now, with retail, the landlord cannot charge the lease preparation cost. So that could be $1,500. But they can charge the registration cost of the lease, and they can charge changes cost. So if the tenant sends through 30 changes, they can then be charged on those costs there. So it's very similar to commercial, where a lot of lawyers won't if it's like 5 or 6 and it's really quick and it's just clarification. But if you get those hero lawyers that want to rewrite the lease, then they can go back and go, cool, you're paying for this. You're paying for these changes.
And Miles said, good morning. Michael, I'm getting a wave of comments from people wanting to know where you got your haircut from.
Yeah, fresh cut, Alamayo, up in Manly.
Wow, it's really, it's
I was growing
very
it
fast.
I was growing it out, so it's still pretty long, which I'm pretty. Yeah, I thought it would change.
We should name that. Okay, so we've covered deposits for retail, commercial. Can we talk about now deposits for residential rentals? So residential rentals. Residential rentals. I've put my deposit down. I'm a tenant and I've changed my mind. Do I get my so I put down 1 week, and 2 or 3, 4 or 5 days into it, I've decided, hey, I'm not going to proceed anymore. Can I get my deposit back?
Majority of the time, no. It's been.
Don't forget, guys, or even on this, there's a little bit of, and you said you used the word majority. There's a little bit of leeway. There's a little bit of hustle. So, majority, no. But sometimes if you complete a case, a landlord understands that. It's good. Now, bear in mind, people have got to understand that the deposit's not going towards the agency or the agent. The deposit's generally going to go into the hands of the landlord. So it really is the landlord's decision on a bit of goodwill refunding on deposits.
Yeah, it is.
Generally, the standard residential is nada.
Yeah, especially after 4 days, because they've taken off the market, they've cancelled opens, they've had the lease prep. If it was after an hour, then maybe not. If they haven't lost a week of showing it for rent, then there's that potential. So that's where, like we said, Mark, you can sort of negotiate, going, oh, you accepted me at 9 a.m., but 11 a.m. another agent called with a property. Can I cancel? You still had it online. You hadn't really lost any time or momentum. That's a big thing to consider. As much as you're always thinking of yourself, put yourself in the owner's shoes. If they hadn't lost the time.
Downtime. So a deposit on a residential unit is 1 week.
Yep.
House, unit, whatever. What deposit are you putting down for a commercial property? We didn't cover that before, sorry.
Generally 1 month, sometimes 2.
1 1 to 2 months. Got it. Now, a deposit. So we've covered the residential rentals. Everyone's comfortable with that. But if the landlord changes their mind, they can't take the deposit they can't gouge the deposit out of the tenant. So if the landlord changes their mind a couple of days later, they've really got to give the whole deposit back. Yeah.
Yeah. With residential.
Resi.
Yep.
Resi on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
I was just thinking, because the landlord can still withdraw up until the lease signed. A holding deposit's not binding for residential.
Yeah.
Nothing signed, so.
Yeah. Everyone's really loving your haircut online today, mate. It's just going crazy. It's really. I've never even seen this. The amount of viewers based on your haircut's gone. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Well done, mate. Well done to your hairdresser. Okay. Now let's go over to sales.
Sales.
Now, with sales, how much do you put a deposit down when you buy a sales property, residential?
Yeah, so when you buy it conditionally, you're putting a 0.25% of the sale price down. So at $1 million, it's $2,500, and you sign contracts in exchange with generally a 5-day cooling off period, which is binding. So an owner cannot pull out if they got a higher offer, but a tenant can. A tenant has 5 days, but they do forfeit that 0.25% deposit. You can ask for extensions that may be granted. But Mark, what about unconditional?
If you put down 10% deposit and you've signed for the property, as in sold, that's what sold looks like. When the sold goes on the board, it's a 10% deposit down. Both parties are signed, no cooling off period. You will lose your 10% deposit. Finished, plus damages, if there's any.
So you basically
$1 million property, you just wiped off $100,000. Just for the record, I've seen it done once, twice, 3 times in my career.
Yeah, very uncommon. Commercial sales is very much like residential unconditional. There's no cooling off period. Yes. You put down a 10%, you sign, sold. No cooling offs.
I'll just repeat that again. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are buying a property in New South Wales, you get a 5-day cooling off period as standard in the contract if it's in New South Wales, right? Residential. But in commercial, there is no standard cooling off in the contract at all. You are hooked in, hook, line and sinker. So if you put down 10% deposit, sign a contract, seller signs a contract and you've exchanged, you will lose your 10% deposit.
Yep, this is true. All right, I think that's a wrap. That's everything you sort of know with deposits.
Hopefully helped everyone today. And Michael, congratulations again. Really happy for you and your haircuts. Congratulations, mate.
I'm feeling good.
Absolutely.
Deals are going to come. It all starts from the top.
It all starts from the top. And guys and girls, if you want us to talk about anything on the show that you're thinking about, let us know. Just direct message us, comment here on what you want us to have a chat about. If there's a topic that it's particularly sensitive to you at the moment and you want some clarification around it, ask the experts and we'll talk about it the following day.
Yeah, and tomorrow we're going to talk about COVID-proof tenants, what people are really looking for when buying a commercial property. And if you're a landlord or a potential buyer, what are some really good COVID-proof properties that have done really well when we've been selling them and what to look for. Thanks, guys.